The existing structure of this Joburg home was John's big technical challenge. Typically, he's involved in the build. It allows him to create features that lend atmosphere. Yet on this house, he'd need to rely purely on his decor techniques.
John, I think from the entrance hall, you can already tell that this is a very classic home.
Classic is a good word. I like the word classic because that's what it is. It's a classic style as opposed to that horrible cliche that we hear in South Africa often of French style, because I hate that word. I mean, what is that, you know? And what we are doing is we're creating a style which I'd like to refer to rather as pan-European, because there are influences from all over Europe that you see within the house, and what you're also seeing is from room to room, stylistically, the house shifts. So it's not just one style, it's various styles that you see put together in a way that's coherent.
The dining room is in hand-painted linen.
Okay, John, I can see. We walked into France?
Well, it's subtly French. I prefer the word chinois because there's a lot of Chinese influence in the space. The colouring for the room was inspired by the garden, and what I wanted to do was pull the garden into the room, and I decided to settle on a sage green. And the reason we painted the walls in magnolias is because, one, there's the garden influence, and two, it's subtly Chinese. And that was sort of the idea for the space. The mirrors, of course, were very important. The reason we're using mirror, and the reason we use mirror in a lot of the spaces, is because the color is quite quiet. What the mirror does is it amps it up and creates a lot of drama and sparkle.
But I think when you walk into the room, the first thing that you see is this magnificent lantern.
I designed the lantern and it's subtly Chinese inspired. Everything in the room has a subtle Chinese influence, but not too over the top that makes it obvious. And hopefully it's a little bit new in its way of saying pan-European chinois.
Some more chinois. But John, this isn't wallpaper.
No, this was all hand painted in South Africa, which I just find so amazing. This detailing painted onto silk and this customized finish. You don't really pick it up when you see it in a photograph, but when you're actually in the space, you can feel how special it feels.
Entirely different was the client's Camps Bay getaway, which John did in modern black and white. Here, the personality was achieved delicately, though there was room for some star pieces.
You see, I know an Oscar de la Renta masterpiece when I see one. No ways.
Interestingly enough that you picked that up, the chairs are from de la Renta, and I found those when I was on a trip in New York. And what I was faced with in this room was a 1930s fireplace, which was quite a strong element in the room. So what I wanted to do was give it a different meaning. And how I set about doing that was I thought, okay, let me rather create a trellised pavilion out of this environment. We already had the detailing on the ceiling, so I thought, okay, let's play with that, tie it all together so that it has a meaning, and a new meaning, a more interesting meaning.
You cannot ignore the hand-painted bamboo pattern on the wall.
It's very important. What pattern can do is it can reinforce an architectural idea just by applying a pattern. So what the pattern is doing is it's creating vertical elements in the space. So instead of the space becoming flat, we've made it taller with the use of pattern on the wall.
You'd think that grand stairs would be a cinch to decorate after John's design work on the interiors of private jets, but this still proved a tough case.
Now this staircase is very grand. I'm guessing you use the art behind you to accentuate the height of the room?
Absolutely. I actually really struggle with staircases. These awkward walls that you have to deal with, and what do you put on these large walls? So I actually took the cue for this particular piece, which we commissioned behind me, from the Kentridge, which you see opposite, which ties the whole thing together.
The fact that John and his client developed the interiors over 3 years means that every room is a character with a well-rounded personality. Each look is confident and knows where it comes from.
Now this is beautiful. Very, very, Eastern? I think the first thing you notice when you walk into the main bedroom is definitely this color.
That was actually the starting point for the room. The client said he wanted a yellow room. And what we started with in this room was the upholstered walls. And why I think that is really working, because of the chocolate brown is also making it a little bit more earthy, which is taking some of the brightness out of it.
This room is very, very different from all the other rooms, yet also ties in quite easily into the rest of the house.
When you add umber, a brown, into a color, you make it more natural, you make it more earthy. So you could have an earthy yellow, an earthy blue, etc. And that is what we've done throughout the house. By using the earthy version of the color, it's created that soft thread throughout the house.
The bedrooms are the client's favorite and as different as a pair of siblings.
So what in here for you is the most striking element?
Well, the color blue and this exquisite four-poster bed, I can't even choose. It's beautiful.
From a decorating perspective, the client wanted a blue room, so we set about creating a blue room, and the starting point for this room was actually the Redoute prints that you see on the wall, which I found in this particular color, and then we worked the rest of the room around that. And we also wanted to create height, a very luxurious feel in the space, so that's why we decided to do a fully upholstered four-poster bed.
Now, if one wanted to change the feel of the room from something very opulent and tranquil to something even more dramatic, how would they go about doing that?
Well, one of the simple things you could introduce, for example, is using two different fabrics on your bedspread.
Oh.
So you could have a pattern on the one side and a plain on the other, and that creates a completely different mood to the room.
He added to the prints by commissioning Tracy Lynch to paint these Cape Botanicals, creating height above the bath. Also incorporating prints, the home cinema is a room that will never date and which you'd hardly guess has a television.
What is this particular room used for?
Well, this is actually his TV lounge. And the reason for the dark colors is obviously when you watch television, you want a deeper, richer experience. So that is why we used the colors that we did in the space. And also from a decorative perspective, the reason we've got these sort of neoclassical forms in the space is I purchased some of these lamps in Europe and I wanted to tie an idea together, and this was the perfect coloration to do that with.
From classic to modern, London, Paris and New York, all in one day. Thank you so much, John. I cannot wait to see what you have next.